Hello, everyone, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar, How One of the World's Top Tech Companies Reimagined Learning in a Fast-Changing and Connected World. I'm Dave Wentworth, and I'll be kicking things off for us today. So let me just start with some introductions. I am the Principal Learning Analyst here at Brandon Hall Group, and I am joined today by our presenters, Mariana Popovich, Global Head of People and Organization Development at eBay, Jennifer Randall, Learning Architect at SGNL, Jerry Connor, Global Head of the Leadership Practice at BTS, and Andrew Burns, Vice President at BTS. Now, I would like to extend a thank you to BTS for sponsoring today's webinar. BTS is a consultancy specializing in the people side of strategy. For over 3 decades, they've been designing powerful experiences that have a profound and lasting impact on businesses and their people. Their next generation approach combines deep business knowledge with transformational development to help your people and your company evolve together and turn strategy into results. BTS is also recognized as a Brandon Hall Group Gold Smart Choice Preferred Provider. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Brandon Hall Group, we are a research and analyst firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. A quick mention that we currently have several certification programs currently open for enrollment, including our Certified Learning Strategist program. You can visit certification.brandonhall.com for more information. And your participation in our surveys is one of the most crucial components of our research. So if you have a few minutes to spare and you see any topics that you could take a survey for, it's greatly appreciated. Links will be available in the handout, and you can always visit www.brandonhall.com and see open surveys. All participants receive a piece of complimentary research once the results are analyzed. And then finally, just a few logistics for everyone. If you'd like to ask some questions, please use the questions panel on your control bar. That will help the panelists keep track of the questions that are being asked and what's being answered. Today's presentation is being recorded, and we're going to share a link to the recording as well as a PDF of the presentation via email in about 24 hours. The chat is also open for today, so please join in today's discussion, share your thoughts, chat with each other, or even just say hello and let us know where you're joining from today. We always love to hear from everybody. And if you would like to download a copy of the presentation instantly, the link to do so will be available in the chat momentarily if it isn't already. And without further delay, I'm going to turn things over to Jen so she can dive right in.
Thanks so much. Wow, David, you're such a professional. I'm like setting the bar high out the gate. But hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Super excited to have this conversation today and share what BTS and eBay have been up to. So just to get a little bit of an overview here, we're going to, already done introductions. We're going to share a little bit of our perspective regarding the problem at hand facing the market today and BTS's point of view on that. And to help really illuminate all of the work and thinking, we have a wonderful guest from eBay, Mariana, who's going to share the challenge that eBay is facing and the work that they've done in response to that. And we'll end our time with just a little bit of a glimpse of what's potential in the future. So stay tuned for maybe a little story time. All right. So with that, I would love to turn over to Jerry. You'll share your perspective on the challenge.
Thanks, Jen. So yeah, I actually think this is one of the times in my career when the learning field has been most disrupted. One of the reasons for it, I mean, the slide is quite a good illustration, is I think most of us know that the innovation life cycle is getting shorter. And then if you layer that on the context we're operating in with the continual challenges from COVID to supply chain to global warming to geopolitics, et cetera, what we've fundamentally got is we need to pack more into less time. So there's more stuff people need to learn in order to respond, but we've got less time, which means unless we're really clever, the unmet learning needs grow. So I think that's one really key piece for the context, and putting that in numbers. Then there's a figure here which I think is really interesting. 80% of all companies rate their business highly complex or complex for employees. So complexity has grown hugely. 40% of people say they don't have time to do the training they need. So people's time is getting less and less. Most of us as professionals know this, that 80% of what we learn is typically forgotten within a week. So we've got the challenge of learning retention. 48% of employees will work remotely in the new normal. So we've got the challenge of hybrid and how do we create learning in a hybrid context. And 52% want learning at the point of need. So we've got a group of people that we're servicing who are used to a much more immediate personalized consumer culture. and want learning to adopt to that. So that's some numbers in terms of context, and it's no wonder that a colleague I have, who's actually one of the better global CEOs, said if we continue doing what we've always done, we'll fall further and further behind. At a practical level, what does that look like when we're talking to people? Here's some examples of things we're hearing in the market. Firstly, we're hearing a continual search for next practice. Some of the modalities that were really new 10 years ago are getting commoditized. We're hearing a lot about learning culture, which I think is a way of us as practitioners talking to that learning gap we talked about earlier. But a lot of organizations are talking about building a learning culture. We've got a lot of organizations whose immediate response to that was through a lot of these huge libraries of content, but then actually suffer from minimal utilization. So I have a lot of clients talking about how do we personalize, and how do we personalize in a meaningful way. We hear a lot about the post-COVID reality. So a lot of us pivoted to virtual, to much more bite-size in COVID. What do we come back to? What's the new normal? Now we've got a greater blend of approaches. Another one that comes up a lot is because in order to succeed in what's fundamentally this new world, because of cost reasons, you often have to go modular, you often have to go digital, which creates trade-offs between local needs. How do we meet local needs when we have a central curriculum? How do we connect that very directly to the business's expectations and goals? Hear a lot about data and analytics as we move from an old-fashioned kind of training needs analysis way of thinking to a much more dynamic, insight-led way of learning what our users need and responding really quickly. And of course, we're constantly trying to move from actually driving knowledge to driving mindset and application. So those are the things we're hearing in the market. I mean, I guess one way of capturing it is I quite like this model. And if you think about it, that if you look at the two axes, we're always trying to drive more value, more impact. And secondly, given the changes we talked about, we're constantly being asked to build more and more broader and broader capabilities with the same resources. In order to do that, we're often having to shift up the continuum. The continuum at the bottom, we've got episodic, which is learning opportunities focused on specific programs or solutions. Responsive, which is actually a huge part of the market at the moment. I'm sure for a lot of us here, it's the world we operate in. Responsive often looks like you have a really intelligent curriculum, you have frontline leader, mid-level leader, enterprise leader, we have our top talent programs, we might have scalable coaching, we might have a curriculum of content. So for a long while, that was best practice, and around 73% of organizations are there in episodic. But what we're tending to find is, because of what we just said so far, organizations are stretching to more continuous, so where learning is focused on improving performance and valued as a core competence, to a much more dynamic place where learning is proactive, organizationally aligned, and absorbed in the flow of work, which I think might be some of what Mariana was trying to do.
Well, before we get into that, we do have a poll for the room, right? So if we could actually ask this question to get everybody engaged in the room here, what are some of the challenges that you all are facing as you're designing learning for the future? We'd love to just hear from everyone here. So take a second and answer that question, and let's see what you all are facing. All right. Interesting. So it looks like making learning more personalized for our people is one of the most challenging areas that folks are facing, followed next by shifting the learning culture. Well, I guess actually tied neck and neck, and then using data to drive decision making. No others. So no open-ended. I'm just curious quickly, is anybody out there interested in sort of sharing a little bit more about like what are some of the challenges that they're facing? If not, it's okay, but just wanted to see. Okay, quiet still. That's fine. All right, well, with that, let's turn it over to Mariana because I'd be curious to hear from you, Mariana. What was the challenge that Mary agreed, hard to pick one area. So many challenges. Mariana, maybe you could share a little bit of what eBay was facing.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity to share our story. And as Jerry pointed out, this is not a story about, hey, we've solved it. Sorry if you were expecting that, but very much about our journey. So I'll give you a little bit of context about kind of what prompted the journey, and then a bit later on share some specifics. But I'd say we're very much somewhere in the middle there. The intent is clear. We're kind of two years in, but it's a long process to actually creating a truly continuous learning culture. So just to quickly kind of frame where we had come from, probably 2019 and even before that, like many other organizations, we had training curriculums and a more, I guess now, traditional approach to development in that we had quite heavy best practice, but heavy competency models that weren't responsive enough to the changing needs of our business, and often what we call flagship programs that, whilst high quality, they were really hard to scale and hard to embed the changes. So in terms of the business payoff, it wasn't there, and it was quite resource heavy to actually be able to execute upon that. So we made the tough call in 2019, given the state of the business and some of the challenges that we had externally, to actually stop and take time to actually really rethink what does it look like to now recreate learning and development for the new eBay. And it was very much a new eBay because in 2020, we had a new CEO, and we essentially stood up our current culture, our DNA, new set of beliefs. And with it, we developed a leadership framework, which I'll share a little bit more about in a bit. But what was a core driver for myself and my team is, how do we really lean into customer centricity? That big word that often, it's been associated with sales and marketing people, but really should be lived and breathed by everybody in an organization. How do we balance meeting the business exactly where they're at, as well as learning professionals anticipate their needs? So how do we just provide enough stretch? And whether that's about making sure that we're keeping up with the changing external nature of our business, and with a company like eBay, it's evolving at a very rapid pace. And so how do we make learning agile and responsive as well? So understanding the needs of the modern learner, absolutely. It is only 1% of our time that Josh Bersin alluded to we have for learning and development. So in that sort of world, how can we actually create something that's impactful? So how do we then land a set of learning experiences that feel like they're a bit more bite-sized, a bit more modular, that are connected still to peer learning, connected to the nature and the flow of work, and are experienced in a really true social peer learning way. So you'll see our tagline there, just enough, just in time, just for me. That was very much a guiding principle for the work that we did. But I'd love to pass over to our BTS friends to talk about some of the ideas that they have and their approaches, and then I'll share a little bit more about how we implemented some of those at eBay.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
I mean, if I think about, I think I was just listening to the chat. It's a really interesting challenge, I think, for us as professionals. There are three pillars that certainly I've got really fascinated about. The first one I think is quite well illustrated by these numbers. So the number on the left is for me representing like the demand, the need. So it says that 80% of employees say that learning and development would help them feel engaged. So people want it. And we know that our businesses absolutely need it and are demanding it from all the data I just shared. But here's a second data, which was from a client who had 834 active users of their digital learning library from 42,000 employees. So in other words, just having the need isn't enough. We need to do something else around it. And for us, that's about the way we think about the learning architecture so that it taps into the learning culture, the culture of the business as it is now, and its priorities in an intelligent way. So the first question is, how do we think about this stuff and how do we structure it so that it makes sense? Second one, which is really important to me, is probably best phrased as three assumptions. The first one is that for me, less is more. So I don't know if you guys use things like Percipio, the Skillsoft platform, or LinkedIn Learning, but they have LinkedIn Learning has 16,000 courses. Percipio, I think, has 7,000. So huge volumes of stuff. I actually believe less is more. I think one of the ways we can best engage people is by focusing it much more. At BTS, we've often done that around mindset. So we have a huge body of research going back around 15 years now around the biggest changes that make a difference to leaders, and the topics and content and mindsets that result in those. We often use that to anchor learning in the things that will most impact. The other thing that leads you to conclude is I talk to a lot of people who the way they've responded to this demand to personalized learning, to scale it, to meet the demands that we just have to learn more stuff, is they've gone very digital. But I actually think that while a 3-minute video in the flow of work performance support is hugely valuable, it's simply not going to be the thing that helps us learn everything. There are times when we have to go deep. There are times when we need an experience. There's times when we need more than that. So we would argue certainly that when we're looking at learning architecture, it's really important to start with mindset, start with the big changes we're trying to drive, and then look at the content that's going to support that. And then the third piece, which I know Mariana's going to talk to a little bit, is that means we need to think carefully around the modularities. So to think about how people learn. One way which eBay used quite nicely is to talk about it in terms of kind of what are the times you need to learn on your own, for example, with digital content. What are the times you want to learn with others? So experiences, peer learning. What are the times you want to learn with a coach? So one-to-one, talk with an expert, a coach specifically about your topic and challenge. So for me, I think that's one of the really critical knotty things. Is this isn't a digital problem, it's a holistic learning problem, which means changing the way we think about our learning curriculum as a whole. Otherwise, what we end up we lose the depth and we lose the impact. And then the fourth challenge that we've just got hugely fascinated about is there's a third pillar to these things, and it's all around adoption, it's all around data, it's all around user experience. This slide I've got up at the moment is a little challenge that came from some experts in a sub business called Rapid Learning in BTS who are just awesome at this. And this is one of the provocations they gave me, which I thought was really useful. They said, look, honestly, when did any of us wake up thinking, today I need to learn influencing, or today I need to master difficult conversations, or today I need to become more resilient? The reality is we wake up thinking, I'm stressed and I don't know if this is the right job for me. Or, ouch, my supervisor completely ignored my input during our planning meeting, what should I do? Or, to get this initiative done, I have to get all these people in other parts of the organization to start allocating their time and efforts to helping our team. So I think it's a huge challenge, and it's a nice provocation about adoption, which is a big part of the third pillar. And for me, a huge challenge in any of these projects is how do we talk to the learner in language in a time that makes sense for them, rather than a language and a time that makes sense to us as learning professionals. So those would be three pillars that are super important to us. One is actually how do we build an architecture which speaks to the culture and context and business priorities. Secondly, how do we make sure we do it in a way that really doesn't scale out human connections, so shifts mindset and use a full range of learning resources? And thirdly, how do we build the data? How do we build the user experience? How do we build the adoption ecosystems that make it all thrive? So those are the pillars. What it ends up being is it means that we can think about approaching learning and leadership development in a way that moves from relying on programs, which are prescribed solutions to meet needs, to a nice mix of push different pools. So personalized pathways that are flexible for individuals and teams, that guides continuous achievement, that moves from one and done events, which people attend and stop, to genuinely deep and continuous practice where learning's about trying new skills in the flow of work, and that's supported both by content, by challenges, and also by people, by peer support, by coaches. That moves from knowledge and toolkits to semi-knowledge and a range of tools to support application, to actually really focusing on the few changes that drive the biggest impact, particularly around mindset. And then move from learning libraries with generic learning products to literally unforgettable shared experiences, which create community and shared ownership for fostering a learning culture. So that's the context we've been operating in. I love the challenge. I think it's fascinating, and I'd love to hear a bit more about Mariana.
Well, and Andrew as well. So Marianne and Andrew, you went into this journey together, and so it'd be great to just hear how you all made this theory real and practical in application.
Absolutely. Andrew, did you want to say anything, or I'm happy to kick off?
Yeah, I'll let you kick off, and then I'll just share context. You know, everything that Jerry has described is a work in progress. No organization has fully delivered on this, but the thing that I fully respect about Mariana and her team is the willingness and the importance of experimenting and learning as we go. So that's the thing I'll continue to go back towards, you know, keeping kind of the principles in that emerging point of view. But Mariana, what was ultimately the solution that you've launched?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And you'll see the word iterate there a couple of times. It's not by accident. It's, I think, just a recognition that, as we know, change is constant. So our ability to continue to pivot with the business and actually finding something that's workable, both in terms of engaging people, and I saw some of the chat comments about how do you actually get them there. We'll share a bit some of our strategies, but then how do you continue to evolve and iterate to make sure that it's driving the value that you want. So a couple of things that we did first, and most importantly, we had a clear end state in terms of what should this feel like, and back to the just enough, just in time, just for me. So we wanted to make sure that we're bringing to life something that was simple, flexible, and could work in a globally matrix environment. So the first step was we needed to simplify the way that we spoke about leadership. So we moved away, aligned to our new culture and the needs of our business and our business strategy. We moved away from what was more of a assessment, competency-based language to leadership outcomes. And in fact, 5 leadership outcomes. So some of the stuff that you saw Jerry talk about in terms of mindsets, that was actually quite a big pivot for us to actually start talking about not just the behaviors that we want to see, but what is the shift in how a leader should start to approach working with their team, interacting with their peers, and how do we then articulate what shifts in our mindsets as well as our behaviors as the complexity and the nature of our leadership roles continues to expand and evolve. So that was my first kind of the what is it that we're trying to solve for. And you'll see a lot of simple language, hence the what, the so what, and the now what. So once that we introduced this much simpler language, it was something that was designed with the business, so it spoke to the business. We then needed to give them really simple ways to engage. Well, where am I? If I want to actually leverage this image, how do I bring it to life? And how do I start to have opportunities to either just reflect and prioritize my development needs, or start to speak to my peers in terms of where are the gaps? So of course, being responsible, we created some simple tools. One was very much a coaching-based tool that we partnered with BTS on, that helped guide development planning and focus both on strengths and capitalizing on strengths, as well as looking at gaps. And then your typical 360 tool, again, more focusing on simplicity, fewer questions, more outcome driven. So more based on the actual work and observing that. After that, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Well, the thing I wanted to just stress, as Mariana, like what you're describing, was not an overnight effort. If you also think about like, how did you prioritize, and what did you prioritize first to bring to life this principle around just enough, just in time, just for me?
Yeah, firstly, we just needed to continue a place of strength, which is we know that learning best happens at eBay with peers, probably not just eBay, at many other organizations. So we wanted to make sure that we continued that focus, but at the same time, we're able to bring in something that reacted to learners' individual needs and that reacted to a global multi-language audience. So there was a lot that we were trying to do in terms of the solutions, where sometimes it's about a modality. It might be that I actually prefer to learn with a coach. It might be that I want to learn with peers, or it might be that I just need to consume a video. So we're loving our tagline. So the other tagline that always oriented our work is the learning should be applicable whether you have 3 minutes, 3 hours, or 3 days. And how do you lead to all of those? So if you just want a taste, and like some of Jerry's examples, there's a moment that happens and you just want to react, you want to be able to consume a quick video or an article to meet you where you are right now. If you want to go a little bit deeper and start to build on that skill set or shift a mindset, then you can engage with content that was a bit deeper. But firstly, we needed to meet the needs of our core audience, which is the 700 or so leaders that, given that we stopped the traditional curriculum, needed actually some growth. So we focused on those 700 people, provided them a simple, engaging experience where they could connect with each other, start to form a community, and actually start to learn from each other and learn some of those basic skills of how do I now need to show up differently as I step into a people manager role? How do I lean into some of the fundamentals of coaching, of feedback? So that was the primary audience where we really needed to make sure we supported people. And then for the 13 or so 100 other people, I like to think about it as a choose your own adventure path. So as I talked about, we have 5 leadership outcomes that we're looking to build across our leaders. So we really wanted to make sure we empowered people, whether they did a self-assessment tool or whether through some feedback through their leaders, they decided, for example, they really wanted to get better at creating a clear and more compelling strategy and articulating that to their team. So again, everything was grounded in clear mindset and a clear skill that we're trying to build, and people could go in and do bite-sized work, still peer learning, and actually grow a specific skill set.
Now, Mariana, I know it's always hard to boil down the approach, but one of the things I've learned working with you over the last, since 2019 is your obsession with the customer, and always taking more of a customer first approach. And in this case, the internal employees are your customer and you're trying to drive that mindset. Maybe we could look at like what that experience looks like from an individual employee, because again, I think that was something that the team always emphasized, is let's actually look at it from the perspective of a real team leader, in this case, Farouk, who is an actual engineering manager within eBay. Maybe tell us a little bit about what would this look like from Farouk's perspective.
Sure, and feel free to build the slide as I talk to it. And again, I think some of the things that Jerry mentioned earlier really resonated for us, because you don't wake up kind of going, hey, I need to do X course, or maybe some of us do that are in the profession, but for most people, it is a moment or a problem-based approach. So we build personas to really start to lean into, from knowing our audience so well, what are those key moments and what are those key issues that we need to support people with. So in this particular example, to bring it to life, we have somebody that's been newly promoted to a team leader role, and in the regular conversations with the leaders, they actually get some feedback. So what do you do about that? We've got an option for Farouk to, in this case, do a diagnostic to actually understand a little bit more about what their opportunities are for development. And then what we do is we create a very simple report out that kind of suggests, hey, these are the different ways that you can engage. Again, it could be a video or some quick go-dos, and we've partnered with BTS on some of those very super bite-sized approaches, or it might well be coaching. Again, we really lean in on democratizing development. So we want to give everybody access to growing, whether it is through coaching, all the content being aligned, whether it is through more of a structured approach where you're learning as part of a cohort, which is what a lot of leading at eBay is about, or if they want to learn on their own and actually just want to consume a video, consume some quick ideas, they can do that.
And the thing I'll just emphasize, Mariana, that you've always challenged each one of your partners with is that user experience. And so everything you've described, they can access within 2 clicks. So there's
Absolutely.
that was
And
always
it's never led, I think most importantly, and to react to some of the previous comments in the chat, I think what we've really worked hard at doing is cutting out the HR speak as much as possible. And that is an ongoing journey for all of us. But to make sure that as we speak about the learning opportunities, it is in their language. And so we often get people that have participated in the programs talking about it. We have it more of a problem-based or a moments-based approach to how we share what the programs are about, and we need to make it super easy. Being a technology company, if the experience isn't brilliant, they disengage.
now, obviously, it hasn't been all perfect or roses. I mean, if you think about the last 12 months or a couple of years, what are some of the big lessons that you've learned?
Yeah, plenty of lessons, both that were great surprises and a kudos to the team, and also ones that weren't unexpected, but continue to be sources that will keep us gainfully employed and evolving this. So firstly, I think one of the biggest surprises, and kudos to also our partnership with BTS, is that really a lot can be done in 12 months. We essentially stood up an entire new leadership development offering within a few months and over the last 12 months in its entirety with a very, very small team. In fact, I think from the eBay side, it was about 3-4 people really working dedicated, with a lot of subject matter experts coming in and out of the program. But it doesn't take a year to build a leadership development experience that drives impact. It can really happen when you know your audience, you know where you need to start, you start to build momentum and you start to build excitement. And that's what we did. You can see some of the statistics there in terms of the engagement of people that we've had. I'd say the numbers are even higher there. So 25% was probably a few months old. We're seeing tremendous pull on this content. That doesn't mean that we don't need to engage people continuously, but one of the core principles was I didn't want another form of a training calendar. I didn't want push. I wanted this to be something that actually was generated. We could scale up or down with the needs of the business. So that was really important. And I think some of the stats in terms of high levels of engagement, some behavioral change that we're seeing, absolutely are a testament to the quality of what we've created. One of the other things I'm really proud about is that as ever, because the world changes and post-pandemic hybrid world is a reality, we were able to actually anticipate what our customers needed and pivot with BTS to actually provide the same content that we offer virtually in a facilitated virtual way, face-to-face as well. So we now have 2 complementary ways of delivering the content. When our team does need to actually work together, when the business context warrants it, we create the learning in that space. When we actually want to mix people from across the business and offer a bit more flexibility and agility, we have that virtual option. So that's been brilliant. Andrew, before I go into some of the lessons learned, anything else that you wanted to add to in terms of some of the positive benefits we've seen?
Just on this last bullet, I mean, I always think this is really special, and a big challenge is if you don't anticipate and meet the evolving needs, you have shadow groups that will just go and do it themselves. And I think by, again, being so intentionally focused on your end users, as well as the HR business partners or people business partners, which are important influencers, you've been able to evolve and anticipate that. And I think that's been really important to maintain kind of the credibility of your central team to be able to support the business. So I just wanted to emphasize how special that was.
Absolutely. We are in service to them ultimately. They might not always know what they want and what they need, but ultimately we need to try and react to their realities. So as we said, this isn't a picture perfect story. There's always some challenges, some lessons. So those 3 things very much summarize it. Just because you build it doesn't mean that they'll come. Yes, we have had amazing engagement in leading at eBay. And in fact, I think across all of our leadership development offerings, we've reached about 70% of all people leaders, which is tremendous in an 18-month period. But importantly, continuous engagement in a world of overwhelm and distraction. If you remember the 1% of time, we just needed to get really sophisticated about how we use email, how we use Slack, how we tagline things so that it lands in a way that they can consume, lands in the language, lands in quotes. We create resonance with that. And we're still evolving and learning about what's going to work best for them. The second one, again, we know this, changing habits does take time. We are 18 months in a very long journey. What we've learned is whilst the path we're on is correct, the experience is amazing and we are tweaking it. It is a new habit that people are forming. They're not used to truly bite-sized learning that's going to help shift their behavior. They're used to consuming a LinkedIn learning program and then it's one and done. What we've done is actually created several moments where they can practice. So a facilitated workshop, and then they have an action to practice the behavior. Then they come back and they get coaching and peer feedback and they get to practice again. So whilst we created something that is there to drive behavioral change, because that is the business that we're in, making that difference, people are used to going to the workshop. So we've had some issues with making sure that people complete the full journey and therefore get the full benefit of that. And that's something that we're continuously acting on, trying to understand, and we're going to be leaning into voice of the customer and actually bringing both some of our development champions in, because we've got robust data on who's engaging at which point and what, and actually some of those people that are probably less engaged, get them in a room together and let's actually explore how do we start to shift this and truly moving that table of dairies towards much more of a learning culture. And feedback is a gift. We know we don't get a lot of it. It's a bit of an eBay cultural thing. You ask for feedback on anything and you get maybe, if you're lucky, 5% of the organization. But I think when you're shifting an approach to development and shifting essentially a culture of how we look at talent and how we grow our talent, we need it. In any way that we can get it, we take it, whether it's structured, whether it's unstructured. And so we're really trying to be a bit more sophisticated about how we pull all the different data points that we have into a cohesive story that we can then act on, so that we're not just acting on little bits of information, but actually start to notice the patterns in what our people are telling us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mariana. Jen, do you want to tee up any Q&A for us?
Yeah, well, we just did. So Q&A time. We actually don't have any questions in the Zoom Q&A box or in the chat. I think Mariana did a great job of actually touching on a number of the comments that have already been made. But with that, I'd love to just see from the group, are there questions that have popped up? Here we go. Amanda has one. Can you provide examples of how you're collecting data and feedback, such as pre-post surveys, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So a number of things. So with leading at eBay, so BTS has a fantastic dashboard where actually we're able to see how people engage with the entire experience, from people that come in and just show an interest in a program, to people signing up, to exactly when they drop off. And as Andrew will know, I'm a big data geek, so I will dive into all of that and actually start to form hypotheses that we then start to test. Like, is it the length of the module? Why are people dropping off post the workshop? So there's a lot of data that BTS does in how they've structured every single moment, even to the point of how many people complete a development action. And then we also have, as eBay, questionnaires that we send out. So with the breadth of our leadership development offerings, we will always do 3 of the same questions in terms of whether it was relevant, whether it was a good use of the time, and whether they would recommend a program. So what we start to see then across the board and aligned to our 5 leadership outcomes, we start to see data that's letting us know which pockets in the organization are engaging, what are they engaging with, and then with BTS kind of try and tweak on some of those experiences. And typically what we've found, not surprisingly, is that people like the webinar formats, the 60 minutes, like you guys are here today, that they can quickly engage, get a little bit of content, get maybe inspiration, and then go back to their work. What we're trying to shift them towards is, how do you build in the practice and the coaching? And hence, we've got some exciting experience with BTS over the coming months to see how we can dial that up.
Amazing.
Hopefully that answers the question a bit.
That was amazing. Yeah. A few more questions here. when, just little context around their question here, Josh Burzin, if I'm saying his name right, warned HR professionals some time ago that they would not be top professionals if they didn't expand beyond their vertical specialization into the top of the T, where the business units actually live at exponential speed. How do you address the real world connections between HR and the business units?
I wouldn't mind a little bit more context so I get it specifically what you're getting at in terms of connections, because to me we are one. So I don't see a difference between what we're solving for, because we're all part of the same organizational system. So we're both prone to the same errors and the same assumptions in terms of what works and what doesn't. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind either typing in the chat or just going off mute so I can best answer your question.
Yeah, the one
Well,
thing I
Go
can
ahead.
add to the, if I'm understanding this, you have really democratized all of the leadership development, which allows the business units to take advantage of the content experiences at the local level, whether they want to have a cross-functional or intact experience for the business units. So I think that's one thing that helps solve for both, that there's no paywall, there's no waiting, for the 6 months before a business unit can get access. So I think that, I don't know if that's starting to address the question, but
The
that,
way I understood the question, and I think Marani, you sort of touched on it, but just to draw a finer point, is I think like historically, or like, the way HR is seen as sort of driving its own agenda, sometimes that is a disconnect from business ambition or business strategy. And so how do you ensure that the things that you're pushing out to help develop leaders is actually in line with what the business needs, particularly when the business is moving so quickly? So just like, how do you ensure there's no gap?
Yeah, no, great question. I'm sure there is a gap, but we are in continuous conversation. That's how we do it. We never assume that we have it right, and we continue to align to the typical business cycles through good human capital planning, through frequent dialogue with business leaders directly. So me and my team will attend a lot of all hands, be in business conversations to make sure that we're understanding what's actually going on for them. Is there organizational changes happening? Is it actually that we're getting stuck in terms of some product launches? By understanding the nuance of what they're tackling, we're able to reinterpret what we know and offer it up in a way that they understand. So for example, typically through our engagement survey, we know that feedback and actually iterating and working across organizational silos is a big strategic priority for us, because everything is done in teams. So what we've done is we've essentially positioned a lot of the content that we've done with BTS in a way that shows how we can increase collaboration, how we're tackling through the right conversations, through some of the tools and practices, we can help them solve this particular issue.
Amazing. So we have a question from Holly. Did you build your learning content for the leadership competencies, or are you leveraging it from third parties?
So the language of our 5 leadership outcomes is completely generated by eBay. So it came based on alignment to our DNA or our core cultural beliefs and what most resonated with our leaders. So it's not picture perfect in terms of how it started, but what we did is we then brought science to it. So again, I think one of the benefits was it was a partnership with BTS in this case as well. And I think I remember we challenged, Jerry and I had some great challenging conversations around how do we really make it super, super simple, but still be equitable when we assessed it and when we can develop people against it, because it needed to resonate with our leaders. So our leaders co-created it, they tested it with us, but it needed to fit on a page. Everything in our world becomes a one-pager. So how do you keep it simple enough that you can articulate the gist of it in a single page? And then when you need to go deeper, you've got that and you got it in a defensible and an equitable way.
and on the content piece, Mariana, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're using a combination of third-party, internal content and kind of both kind of build, buy, rent type of strategies to support the leadership essentials?
Absolutely. So a lot of the content, even within leading up eBay, still is eBay context and something that resonates with us. And then absolutely, we have speaker series where it is very much moment based. So we listen out for what are the challenges facing our leaders right now, and we'll bring in speakers that can actually talk pragmatically about that topic. So for example, around the pandemic times, people were starting to think about a hybrid world. We talked about how do you balance well-being, how do you actually support people and grow empathetic leadership, and start to explore what it means to work in a hybrid way. We've had Amy Edmondson talk about psychological safety and teaming, because again, a new construct of how teams play together. So we have a mixture of both bringing in experts when it matters and then bringing it to life, and always having, whether it's an eBay leader or whether it's ourselves, to give it that context so that they know that it's uniquely us.
So one final question then is from Lisa. I'm curious to know if their leadership program also covers future leaders, those team members not currently in a leadership role, but those that have potential as a future leader.
Yep, perfect question. Thank you for asking it. So yeah, absolutely does. So we very much started with the 700 newly promoted because they were the most critical audience, 18 months ago. What we've done over the last few months is open the gate, so to speak. So our challenge was, if we're truly going to democratize learning, then we need to democratize learning. That means that anybody can be a leader, and if they show an interest and a willingness, we need to be able to offer them the support and the growth to do that. So whether it is through the kind of the peer learning leading at eBay program, or whether it is through the coaching options, every single employee at eBay has the opportunity to participate in that. We've managed costs to make it accessible and started setting expectations with the business around training budgets. And we've created experiences there for all employees to be able to engage in more bite-sized or in more structured learning. So yeah, that's something that we're doing more so this year. And then I think watch this space, more to come.
And that more to come is always driven by intentional experiments. That's often based in the data, based on the learner needs, and based on what you're hearing from the business as well. And so I think that's a big theme that we want to continue to emphasize: continuous improvement, experiments, iteration.
Yeah, and I guess just to add, because I know in the chat I can see something about audiences. What we have done, because again, through simplifying and having bite-sized stuff, you can unintentionally create more complexity through choice. So what we have tried to do is, rather than talking about this program is for X level of employee or these types of jobs, we talk about who it's best suited for. So we talk about more levels of experience, or whether somebody feels that they're building a proficiency or deepening a proficiency in a particular skill set. So it's their choice, but we try and guide them around who this is best for. We also do have more of the kind of talent programs where we're very intentionally, for example, building our executive leaders and our or our kind of senior leaders. And those are different experiences. They're still more of the 6 to 7 month, deeply experiential with coaching support. What most of the leadership curriculum is there to do is to tackle scale and tackle choice, and very much that just in time, but still feeling like it's just for me at scale.
Amazing. Well, I just want to keep an eye on time. So I think let's maybe not do the second poll here, just because we only have about 10 more minutes. And I know we want to share a little bit of what's possible in the future. And we thought, what better way to paint a picture of possibility than through a story. So we're going to have a little story time. All right. So everyone meet Allie. Today, we'll be learning all about her learning adventures. Allie joined the company 2 years ago as a project manager and experience designer. Within a year, she was promoted to experience design strategist and now has 3 direct reports. Allie has been recognized for her great analytical and technical skills, but she needs to further refine her ability to influence across the network and demonstrate agility on her project. To kick us off, Allie receives an email. A shift has happened. reads the subject on the email that shows up in Allie's mailbox Tuesday morning. Allie had heard that the organization is changing the strategy. This shift has big implications in the ways of working and the capabilities required to make the new strategy successful. In years past, the CEO usually does a town hall where she talks at the employees. She is surprised, Allie that is, that the email popped in her mailbox inviting her to engage in some type of strategy activation. She's intrigued. In the email, she also finds an overview of the journey, a timeline, and an expected amount of time needed to complete. However, she gets distracted and ignores the email's call to action and forgets all about it until she's reminded again on Thursday. Clicks the link in my UI that helps her get grounded in her journey. After 30 seconds of reading, the UI asks her to complete one mandatory activity. She must choose the strategy activation workshop session to join. She finds one for next Monday, where she's usually not in meetings. She selects a time slot, submits her booking, and formally registers for strategy activation workshop. After booking, she gets a message on screen. Spend 3 minutes getting onboarded and get the most out of your time in the journey. She chooses a secondary button, not now, and sees she has an unread email from Harry on her team. She moves on to that. She forgets all about the strategy activation workshop for a while until she gets a nudge reminding her to complete her pre-work before the workshop happening on Monday. She clicks the link and is taken straight to the pre-work that she completes within 20 minutes. The pre-work talks about the why behind the shift, the challenges the organization will face in the new direction, and the winning behaviors needed from everyone. This pre-work is a real eye-opener for Allie. She's not alone in struggling with understanding the reason for all the changes. Afterwards, Allie selects the homepage. As she explores what she has access to, she gets a message on screen. Don't you just hate emails? Allie does, in fact, hate emails, and takes the bait to click I do, which opens a window inviting her to connect her journey to Slack and get notified there. She clicks the link and is taken straight to Slack. Hi, Allie. Is English your preferred language? Yes or no? She chooses yes. When is the best time to connect? She responds, late afternoon, when she's on her train ride home. We'll use this channel to send you notifications, remind you of upcoming deadlines, and once in a while we'll send you a recommendation for something we think you'll find interesting. We love giving good advice too. Stay tuned. If you want to change your settings, you can always do that here. Meanwhile, let's check in with the facilitator who is excited to run Allie's upcoming activation workshop. The night before the workshop facilitator prepares for their session in their dashboard. They learn that a majority of members have done their pre-work. Looks like it'll be a smooth session. A few learners are falling behind, so the facilitator may need to guide a little bit more on the strategy material. Maybe the facilitator will send them a gentle nudge in the morning. They can do the pre-work before lunch. That's enough prep for one night. The next day, Allie joins the first workshop session and gets to discuss and process the strategic shifts the company is making with the other people in the organization. Awesome! This is a lot better than the e-learning course or town hall she thought she was going to get. Meanwhile, Kim, the organization's talent manager, is watching progress closely. Kim is able to use the health check dashboard and is preparing to provide updates to the CEO on the activation engagement. Kim can see the number of employees engaging in stable sign-up ratios are looking good. And the activity index is also trending upwards. 344 users signing up in the last week is reasonable. And looking at how they got into the system, it's clear that the activation workshop pulls people in very effectively. But for now, let's go back to Allie. The following week, Allie gets a ping on Slack from her boss. Do you have 5 minutes to chat? Suzanne, her boss, never just wants to chat, so Allie mentally prepares for a challenge when she walks into Suzanne's office, and a challenge she gets. I promised to deliver a risk analysis of our biggest product launch this year as it relates to the new strategy, and I just got pulled into another project, so I can't find time to do it myself. Your team has been working on the launch for a while. I'm sure you can get it done. Allie has no idea how to approach this challenge, so she goes to her Slack bot and types risk analysis. And she finds a tool she hasn't tried before, a get-together. This specific tool facilitates a risk storming process that engages a team in identifying and analyzing risks. Perfect fit. Allie selects the first link to risk storming get-togethers and is taken right to the UI. When she opens the tool and realizes that she needs to invite her team into the tool to engage them in the process, she cancels a planned team meeting the same afternoon and replaces it with a 90-minute risk storming session to experiment with the get-together tool. She finds it's easy to control the tool. During her practice run, she learned it's basically just clicking the next button. She then reschedules the meeting, and minutes before the session starts, she sends her team a generic link, and they all log in with single sign-on. She starts the meeting and takes the team through a risk generation, a shared assessment of probability and impact, and finally a prioritization of the most relevant risks. At the end of the meeting, Allie leaves with the report with their shared analysis, consensus in the team around the relevant risks, and only a little formatting work to do before sending back the report to Suzanne. While she succeeded in the ask, she observed one of her experienced team members, Harry, exhibiting unproductive behaviors. He consistently complained about the new strategy, doubted the product launch would work, and continually undermined the conversation between the team. Definitely not the winning behavior that Allie had learned in the strategic activation workshop. This isn't the first time Allie has seen this behavior in Harry. A few days later, Allie gets a ping from the Slack bot. Hope you're enjoying strategy activation journey, Allie. Many employees struggle with applying the new winning behaviors to their day-to-day work. Click here to learn more about this, or just type in a challenge we can help you with today. Allie does have a challenge on her hands. She remembers the challenging experience with her direct report, Harry, and has no idea how to have that conversation with him. She types, "I'm worried about having a tough conversation," and hits enter. Bitsy replies back, here are a few recommendations that could help you out," and lists 3 results. At the top of the list is a quick take called Barriers to Feedback. Allie clicks it and goes straight to the cloud experience where the quick take opens on her screen. She watches a short video and explores a few other content options too. One of the feedback frameworks really sticks with her, and she downloads the discussion guide to use it in her next conversation with Harry. It's not easy, but at least she feels well prepared and can navigate the pitfalls easily. The next day, Allie gets another message on Slack. "Hi, Allie, did you take the quick take on giving tough feedback?" Allie gives it 5 stars, as it was just what she needed, and gets another prompt back. In our experience, once you've had a tough conversation, it's important you follow up. Click here to learn more, or as always, type in what you're looking for and we'll find some helpful resources for you. Allie is enjoying her learning experience and is making strong progress toward her own goals and the company's goals. Time has passed, and it's been a while since Allie completed the strategy activation journey, and ever since she's been using the Slack bot every so often to find resources and solve problems. She's also leveraged the recommendations she's gotten a few times and really enjoyed it. But she feels like it's time for a step change. She needs to take the next big step in her development. And eerily, that is the message she gets on Slack that same afternoon. It's time for your next big step. She clicks on the link and it's offered an AI 360 to help you raise your eyes from your path to the horizon and decide where you want to go. Allie is excited. She fills in her bench and sets things in motion. A week later, she receives a booking form to debrief the results with a coach. The coach helps Allie focus on the most important learnings in the feedback, especially zooming in on the areas where her respondents need her to grow and develop. After 90 minutes, Allie and her coach have set up 3 follow-up calls and enrolled her in resilience. The first session is on Monday. Her goals have been updated accordingly and will help focus Allie on her next big step. Allie heads back to the home page to confirm the 3 sessions are scheduled and her content on resilience is ready for her when she is. Her learning continues. The end. Or is it? So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew and Jerry if you want to say some few words.
Andrew, you're about to speak. Oh.
No, I just say fantastic. Do want to say thank you for joining us. Again, we're appreciative of Mariana for sharing her story, as well as getting a chance to just share what we're excited about, what could happen in the future. Again, building upon some of the emerging point of views that Jerry shared, as well as continuously addressing the biggest challenge that our learning organizations are facing today. Jerry, any closing comments from you?
No, just thank you for coming. And I just think this is just a fascinating time to be a professional in this space. So like we'd love to hear what you're learning, hear any thoughts, hear feedback, and vice versa. I just think this is just a super interesting time. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today and all the interaction. And we really appreciate you participating in the chat and the polls. It's great to hear all the feedback and see the questions. And of course, thank you to our panel of presenters today, as well as for BTS for putting on the hour. So thanks everyone. And we really hope to see you again on another webinar, but thank you everybody.